Hey!
Hello!
How are you doing, Rebecca?
How are you?
All good here, all good here. The sun is out, it's not raining, so all good, all good.
Yeah.
It's overcast in LA. We swapped for today.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So for the people that are tuning in, let's just introduce yourselves a little. I'm Rebecca Rivera, designer of IRISHLATINA. Gentlemen.
So I'm Kay, from Kawaki, and yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jano from Kawaki as well. Nice to meet you all. And
Yeah.
Rebecca, see you.
Good to see you guys. Okay, so we're here to talk about multiculturalism in fashion. But we have a couple of questions prepared for you guys. But if you have any, hit us up on the stream, and we'll try to get to those before we finish. But before we get started with those questions, we wanted to introduce our brands a little bit and show you guys a couple of our looks so you can get an idea of what we do. Both Kawaki and IRISHLATINA are heavily influenced on color and texture, so it kind of helps to see where we're coming from. So why don't you guys start by giving a little intro about Kawaki, and I'll show the photos I chose. Oh, because we chose a few photos from, I went on Kawaki's website, chose a few of their photos, a few of my favorite looks. And so I'll show you guys after you explain. Yeah, go ahead.
Those three.
Yeah, the same.
And the thing is that Rebecca doesn't know what we chose and vice versa. So it's kind of like a surprise, like
Kind of a Christmas again.
Yeah. So we are Kawaki, gender fluid, sustainable brand from London. I am originally though from Finland, lived here quite a few years now. So that's why my accent's a tiny bit funny.
And I'm Kay from Hong Kong, but I've lived in London for like 6 years. And we set up the brand, and it's about, gender fluid casual wear that reimagines like crafts, and we are based in East London.
So lots of textures, like you said, lots of textures, and some of the fabrics we make ourselves, and very, very crafty, very crafty.
Yeah.
In a good.
Yes, in a good way. Let me show you guys what I chose.
Yeah.
Oops.
Whoopsie.
Okay. I kind of chose 4 because I couldn't help it. Okay.
Ooh, our present.
This look. Let me do one by one. This look. I'm obsessed. It's like pieces of paisley that are so fabulous. Did you guys knit these?
So this is from our last season's Paris Fashion Week show, and our theme was kind of like a childish way of interpreting paisley, and huge inspiration for this collection and these particular garments was The Little Prince. Yeah, by a French author. I love the book. We love the book. We love the story. So the top is crocheted paisley, individual paisley pieces, and they've been crocheted together.
And we mainly use the yarns that is like we collected from our factories and mills. And there are some leftover yarns for us to use, which we are, they're really generous to give them to us. Then we just use them to make paisley, because those yarn, they're not a lot, maybe like 50 grams, so you can't actually make it's not enough to make a sleeve as well, so we make it into a small paisley and pack them together.
The yarn is normally like thrown away otherwise. Is it stuff that would be discarded?
Yeah, it's just kind of like base bits. When we knit, or when Key knits at our studio, we save all the leftover yarn, and we use it to do something like this. And the hat the guy, beautiful model is wearing, it's also crocheted, and I think he was kind of like, and this look was the Little Prince of the presentation and the show. Okay,
let me show you my next one. This I'm obsessed with. I would wear this around the house or out and about. It's so great. And you guys crochet this whole thing?
Yeah, I love it. I totally love it. This is kind of like our first time to actually use knitting as the method to make dresses, and we're really satisfied with the results. Yeah, and the same concept, like we use the leftover yarn to make some small patch and then just patch them together.
Love it. I'm obsessed.
And this is from New York show.
Oh, that one. Oh, awesome. Okay, this guy I want to be friends with. Honestly, if I saw him out, I would ask.
Do you know what? He was
so fun.
super amazing. I think he rhymes and raps as well, and obviously he's a model as well. And what we did in New York, our models, they were reading little pieces of text as well while they were modeling. And this guy was just amazing, really phenomenal. And they had a microphone and they were reading the text, little stories of life. And this look, maybe, again, the trousers, very kind of like childish interpretation of paisley, different kind of like characters painted into paisley shapes. I think we used watercolors and acrylics and
it's maybe kind of let our inner child like out, right? To kind of make this painting, and we
you guys did this print. It's so fabulous. It reminds me of Dr. Seuss. I love Dr. Seuss.
And the top is knitted. The dots are kind of like a fluffy texture.
Yeah, with those sustainable yarns like organic cotton and recycled polyester, etc.
So great. I'm obsessed. Okay, I threw in a fourth, but I know we weren't supposed to do. But this is great. Obviously, this is the name of this collection, right? I'm sick of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, this is kind of like our motto as well.
Yeah.
So, this one recycled polyester yarn and then hand embroidered I'm sick of toxic masculinity text on it. Love it. The color is so striking that when you see it in real, it kind of like blinds you.
Yeah.
So
really kind of like childish 80s kind of like fluorescent pinkish color.
You're definitely going to get noticed if you're wearing this, right?
Yeah.
Definitely going to stand out. Yay. Okay, let me bring you. Okay, so before you share my photos, I'll give a little intro of Irish Latina. So I'm based in Los Angeles, but the brand was born in New York. That's where I went to fashion school. I went to FIT out there. And I used post-consumer garments to make new clothes. So I source my garments from thrift stores and warehouses where I can buy by the pound. And I'll take, just a t-shirt, like this bomber jacket's made of 10 different t-shirts. So I treat them like I'm making my own textile out of these used garments. And it's heavy on color and graphics as well.
Which we absolutely love. And do you mind if I ask you a question? You have background in theatre and performing arts, right?
Yes.
How has that influenced your work and your design?
Pretty heavily. When I've been singing, dancing, and acting since I was little, so always performing. But I was always mesmerized by the behind the scenes, right? So the makeup and the hair and the costumes, and even when I was young, I would dress up my Barbies and put them away because it was the most exciting part of me. It was like dressing them up and doing the most. And so, I think I've totally been influenced by the kind of spectacle and the performance of the theater, right? And bringing that into fashion. Because especially when you think of sustainable fashion, a lot of it's kind of boring, and like what we do is really like really loud and out there. But I don't think sustainable fashion has to be boring.
No, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm very much into theatre and musicals. I love musicals, absolutely love musicals. So, maybe one day we will sing a song together, create a musical.
Karaoke. Yes,
So we shall Let's share screen.
Yeah.
And these are the looks we picked for you. Can you see our selection?
Yeah.
We absolutely love the color and the full-on, you know, the brightness, fluorescent, different. It's just kind of like I could wear that during London Pride easily, you know.
Yeah, and I love the panda.
Yes. Okay, so funny story. My mother drew pandas on all the models. It's so cute. I love it. I asked her. She's a great illustrator, and I asked her to draw a little panda. So every model has a different little panda sliding down with a rainbow. But so these, it's a crop top and a mini skirt, and then this peplum kind of corset on top. The corset's made out of one tie-dye T-shirt. So just use both front and back, and then cut like bias strips for the binding, and then added the grommets for the corset part. And then the skirt's made out of probably 6 or 7 different T-shirts just to get that rainbow in there.
This is amazing.
And they're quilted. It's actually quilted. So just think of a quilt, like it's a little bit.
Yeah. So it kind of like structure. It has tiny bit of like hold to it. Absolutely love it. How do you think in your design, because of your multicultural background, Irish and Latina, how do you think that affects when you design? How do you kind of like embrace your Irish side and how do you combine these two?
Well, I like to say that my brand is a mix of cultures and coasts. So really I'm a mix of cultures, right? And especially being American, you know, it's a melting pot here. And I spent 9 years in New York after going to fashion school there. And the East Coast and West Coast, I'm very much inspired by, right? They're pretty strong cultures, like skate culture, youth culture, hip hop culture. Very, very inspired by those things. And color, like, especially like the Latin cultures are big on color. So I'm very much drawn to that. And I do have a question for you guys about those. So let's like rush through these so we can get through this. Because I have some questions for you.
Our next look, I was kind of like all the how do you call them, the pins, the I love this.
I don't know if you heard of Pogs. It was a popular game in the 90s. They're milk caps. Designs on them, so like Power Rangers and, you know, Coca-Cola and different things. So my brothers and I played with them when we were kids, but I punched holes and made chainmail out of them. Yeah, so those are from the 90s, like vintage toy.
Yeah. Again, texture and color, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And then this one.
Yes. So this is what I call my confetti coat. I actually also take these T-shirts and I make strips of them about 1 inch, and it depends anywhere from like 10 inch to 20 inch, and hand tie them onto the jacket. So it's kind of like a rag rug, if you've ever seen those rugs. So it's like that, but it looks really great when someone's moving. So this is one of the dancers. She opened my LA Fashion Week show, and just having her out there moving and the you know, it's kind of like fringe moving all around. So
do you know what, I watched the video where the dancers were wearing these, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to choose this one.
Yes, for texture, right? And it just looks so fun.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to like the theater and the performance part of it too. I love putting dancers in my clothing and watching your clothing move is really spectacular.
Likewise. Most of our presentations are, you know, combination of models and performers from different backgrounds. So absolutely.
Yeah.
I think clothes are meant to be worn, and they, you know, you need to see them when they are moving.
Yay, that was cool, guys. Okay, let me get into my first question. So we touched on where you guys were born. Where were you born? Where do you live now? And how are you influenced by the culture of where you were born versus where you are now? So you guys are currently in London, but you both weren't born in London?
Yes, exactly. Pete, do you want to
So, I'm originally from Hong Kong, as I said, and well, now we are stuck in London. But, I think I kind of got the hardworking spirit and determination from the Hong Kong side. But at the same time, I would say Hong Kong is quite capitalist and materialistic at the same time. So I don't actually feel like I fit in there much. But after I moved to London, I love the open-mindedness. I love that London is a cultural melting pot, and it actually inspires me a lot, especially from the difference between London and Hong Kong. It actually makes us to think a lot about cultures. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So that was very.
Yeah.
But like London is, I'm sure it is also similar. It is a pretty big melting pot, right? So you get same like when with America, you get a lot of different cultures.
Oh, London 100%, and in a way Hong Kong as well. Kind of like I'm very different to you guys. I'm from a very, very small town or a city from Finland. Even though it's one of the biggest cities in Finland, it's kind of like halfway of Finland, very, very high up north. So I was born there, and I've lived all around Finland. I've lived in a few other countries as well, Poland for a while, Australia, and then ended up in London. I've been here a few times, so there's been something in London what was kind of like luring me to come back here time after time after time. So definitely I would take from Finland kind of like the simplicity, and Finnish things tend to be very practical. They might not be the most extravagant, but they are simple and beautiful. And that kind of like that practicality is kind of like what I take from there. And then again, like he said, they are kind of like multicultural environments, and seeing different kinds of people, hearing them speak their own languages. I love it. Absolutely love it, And here you don't feel like a stranger because you just hear so many different languages, you see so many different kind of people. It doesn't matter if you are wearing a dress when you're strutting along the streets of London, which is wonderful, wonderful.
That's the best about a metropolitan city. I spend a lot of time in New York, and it's the same. And that's the thing with America. So I'm so fortunate, especially in big cities like New York and LA, which are the two places I feel most at home. I'm exposed to so much culture, so it's really wonderful. It's really eye-opening, and it really kind of stretches you, like not just our cultures, right, but being surrounded by other cultures as well can be inspiring. And
100%.
Yeah, really blessed, I think, to have that, and to feel like you were saying, like New York, you can be whoever you want to be, and no one's going to judge you for it. So it's fabulous when you find a place like that kind of accepts you.
Season.
Who you are.
Exactly. And I like where you feel good, where you feel like home, And I do think that people can have multiple different homes,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe even feel more at home, someplace that you weren't born, right? Someplace that you didn't spend most of your life. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so I wanted to ask you guys, with Kawaki being a design duo of mixed races, and IRISHLATINA being a mixed race designer, it's apparent that racial representation is important to our brand, right? So how do you go about selecting your models? You guys have fabulous models. I love, it's a great selection of representation. So how do you go about that?
So we are very, very proud of
our cast.
Our cast and the models we've chosen. And we want to celebrate different kinds of people, regardless of color, sexuality, sex, gender. So we want to embrace many, many different kinds of people. And how we do our casting, sometimes, to be honest, we do it ourselves, and sometimes we have casting agents. For example, in New York, we have one of our really good friends who is a casting agent, Raymond. Hi. He's wonderful, and sometimes we do get a tiny bit of help, and sometimes we do everything ourselves.
I think what we emphasize is like the talents, they kind of carry the spirit of twink, which is kind of like one of these aesthetics that we go for so much. And we love the models that who carries kind of like hedonistic energy, because we believe in energy. Regardless of your age, race, gender, and sexuality, whoever got that energy, we love them.
So kind of like one more thing, like it's kind of like more about their energy rather than the looks. Of course, looks is important as well, but the attitude, you know, if you're willing to do, for example, New York last time, some of our models, we put them in the spotlight because they were reading to all the people using microphone, and it can be really scary, but it's amazing to see how people who are not necessarily trained to do that, how they evolve, and towards the end of the presentation or the show, it's just wonderful. And how they kind of like melt into this unity and they do that thing together. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's not just, we don't just want bodies, right? We want personalities.
Exactly.
So yeah, I want someone, like how I pulled up that photo, I'm like, I want to be that guy's friend. Like that's what it's about. You want to see someone and see a model on the runway and be like, oh yeah, this is my tribe. These are my people. I get this. It's not just a body in an outfit, right? You have to portray that too. So yeah, a lot of times I'll ask my own friends. I'll find girls on Instagram because I'm like, oh, your energy's so fun. Like, can you, can you wear my clothes? So, I mean, think about the models in the early 90s. They were like, they had an attitude, a style, a personality. They weren't just bodies in clothing. It's super important.
It is. And I do think that, it's important when you're doing things, how we are doing our things and how you're doing presenting your clothes. It's the energy is super important. If you look amazingly good but you don't have energy and you're not fully committed to what you're doing, it just doesn't work.
I had my first LA Fashion Week show. Instead of having a runway, like instead of having the girls walk out one at a time and come back, they all walked out and hung out on the runway, and they were just like, walking around, hanging out, chatting. And, you need personality for that. And it was fun because some of the girls did stuff that I didn't expect, but it got the best photos. And it really brings the clothing to life when you have someone living in them, so that's awesome. Okay, next question. So Kawaki and Irish Latina both use the art of craft in their work via techniques like knitting and quilting. Craft and folk art are rooted in culture of many ethnic groups. How are you guys inspired by the crafts of your homeland, and were these techniques passed down to you, or did you teach them to yourself?
So, I would say, unfortunately, my mom and dad, they are from the business background. And, in Hong Kong, you pretty much think of the financial side of it. And they were not into the art and crafts, whatever. But I'm lucky to be in Hong Kong that we have loads of knitting factories. And you can see loads of the politicians in Hong Kong, they own knitting factories. And they're really generous. They're really willing to spend money and efforts on cultivating us as yarn knitters. And I actually learned a lot from them, like in terms of knitting skills and aesthetics and so on. So I kind of take those skills and interpret it in our own way. So I think that's the interesting thing, that it might not be like really traditional craft that you think of, but they're kind of like the work spirit and their techniques, it actually inspired me back. Yeah.
And do you both, who does most of the knitting? Do you guys both knit?
Kim. I do know how to knit, and thanks to the amazing Finnish education, they literally taught us when we were in primary and secondary. We had to learn how to crochet. We had to learn how to use sewing machines. We had to learn how to knit. So I really, really thank, and I absolutely loved textiles when I was in school. So thank you, all my teachers. And I've been lucky. I guess it's kind of like part of Finnish culture that people actually do, and they make a lot themselves. Like my family, like relatives, my aunties. One of my aunties is a seamstress, and one of my other aunties always knitting socks and jumpers. So I kind of like grew up having that around me all the time. And even with my grandma, I used to spend my summers at our summer cottage. So we would do different things. So I've been really lucky in that sense that the kind of like cultural handcrafting skills kind of like automatically transferred to.
Well, it's crazy that, I mean, once upon a time, everyone passed those things down, right? And now we don't really pass those things down so much, those techniques. But yeah, my mother is a seamstress, and my grandma on my dad's side she loved to quilt, and so I'm super inspired by quilting methods, and that's totally where I get a lot of this, because it's like piecing and quilting, and with what we do, and because we're working with small portions of things, right?
Yeah.
It's the best way to kind of like piece things together to work for you. Let's see. Okay, so we touched on musical theater. Did I have any other? Because we're almost out of time. What inspires your design aesthetic? Are there creative influences from your homeland or native culture or current city that inspire your creative process? Like for me, I'm super inspired by 90s fashion. You know, pretty obvious here, right? The oversized clothes, the baggy clothes, but also like the corsets of the 90s on the runway, and all the graphics and the color. Super 90s. Is there something that you guys gravitate? Yeah.
Really bold.
Yes. Is there something that you guys gravitate towards that's like a big inspiration?
I don't. There's so many things I'm inspired. So it's hard to say. There are many things, and I'm kind of like, how do you call the things which point where the wind is blowing that day? I'm kind of like that. So it really changes. It's kind of like if you ask me that what is my favorite music, it depends on the day. So I can't really say. But do you have any?
Well, I think we're mostly inspired by loads of different kinds of youth subcultures, and especially the LGBTQIA+ community subcultures. And we kind of mixed it into our different heritage. Like on my side is the Asian design aesthetics heritage that has actually inspired me a lot. Like for example, the beauty of imperfection, gender neutrality, the humans as well. So kind of mix that with the muses that we have in our mind, like Oli Alexander, Troye Sivan, and yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's really so much, right? There's so much that you're inspired by. I think that's obvious in what you guys do too, which is awesome. I guess we should wrap up because we're losing. Maybe for one more second, because I know you talked about how we don't just make cute clothes, right? So what we do has to have a message behind it. Like Yardna was saying, fashion isn't enough for you. Like it has to have a message. So what would you say that is?
Well, from my point of view, like loving theatre and performance arts in general, I do think that none of these things would exist without each other. So I think they kind of like automatically melt into one, and actually going back to the previous one, like yourself, theatre and films, performances, even dance, massive influence the way how I think and how I see things. So there's always a thought behind what we create rather than just clothes.
And I think we use these kind of methods, like interesting performance and themes and rituals, kind of express our message, like think queen and fuck gender is basically our message that we want to.
I love that. So for me, like with sustainability, right? So it's social justice, sustainability. It's like intersectionality. It's all kind of connected for me. So I can't just like once I became a sustainable brand and I decided to go sustainable, for me it was so much more fulfilling, right? It wasn't just about making cool clothes because anyone can try to do that, but it had a deeper message and I felt like I was doing something more important. So yeah. But I had so much fun talking to you guys. This is awesome.
Same. And you look absolutely fantastic,
Thank you. No. Hopefully I can come to London sometime and visit you guys.
Yeah, you know, if you ever come to London, let's go for a drink or tea, however
Yeah.
you know.
Sounds
And
good.
yeah, thank you so much.
You guys, thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good
You
day
too.
as well.
Ciao,
Ciao,
ciao.
ciao.